Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with your host, Rosie Gilmoss, and joining me is another double-barreled widow. We've got Michael Coulson-Tabb. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Rosie.
And welcome to the podcast, affectionately known as MCT, aren't you?
I am indeed, yeah.
So for our listeners, I'm just going to give them a little bit of background here because Michael and I actually knew each other before we became members of this club. I was friendly with the social circle of your late wife, Alice. So I don't believe we ever had the pleasure of a night out, but we sort of mixed in the same circles. So, Michael, you were brought into this club a little more recently than me, but you've been here for a while now, haven't you? And being a solo parent and a male is a very different dynamic in this world. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on it, and also kind of hearing how widowers, I do tend to call everybody a widow here, but that's, excuse me, purely for simplicity. And it is different. You don't tend to have the same sort of mum network, and you don't tend to talk as much. I mean, I could be way off here, Michael. You could be doing all of these things, but I will let you speak and tell your story, actually.
Okay, well, I moved to Whitstable, where I still live, probably about 10 years ago. I'd split up with the mother of my elder children, and we're sort of thinking about dating. Met Alice the proper way, just in a pub, no dating.
In real life?
Yes.
Wow. Old school.
I very quickly fell for her, and I think she did for me. And she was a bit younger than me, and we had one sticking point, which was Alice didn't have any kids. I already had two, and I was at a stage where I was initially thinking, if I meet somebody, I want to meet somebody who has kids, loves kids, and doesn't want kids. Alice wasn't the same as that. So I had a serious sort of a session of asking myself a very important question, which was, am I just saying, yes, let's have a kid together just to keep the girl, or do I mean it? And I worked out that I did mean it. And then sort of fast forward to, this was in the early sort of 2010s, 2013 onwards, I think. And then fast forward to 2016, and we do find out Alice is pregnant, which is...
I remember. I think I was at Vicky's house when she told us. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So I still hope I was the second person to know. I know I wasn't the first. It was brilliant. It was absolutely fantastic, exciting. Alice absolutely blossomed. And also, even the pregnancy, let alone Teddy being born, was a beautiful thing, because Alice had some mental health issues, and being pregnant helped it. And then Teddy was born. It wasn't an easy birth, but again, just sort of being, if there was a contender, being no expert, for somebody to get postnatal depression, Alice would have been right at the top of the list. And it's just absolutely amazing how our son, mended her. It was just beautiful. She came off antidepressant drugs, and just everything seemed to be brilliant. And I the easiest way of saying it is Teddy mended his mummy. And
that's made all my goosebumps go up.
Yeah, and that's how how we feel. Then we fast forward to, well, not fast forward really. When Teddy was 6 months on, we had that. Alice went to have a lump examined in her breast. She'd had it done before, and it had just been quite benign, nothing to worry about things. So we weren't really overly concerned. But now we know, having sort of running around from two different hospitals and then being brought in quickly, or relatively quickly, is not actually a good sign. And we had that meeting where we were both numb. I was the first one to break down into tears, and Alice was just repeating, "There's my son not going to have a mummy."
Oh,
and that was.
that's got me in the feels. That has, Michael.
Sorry. what's to come, which and and it is, and then there's a horrible period when somebody has cancer, which is that period in between being diagnosed and actually getting into a an actual cycle of treatment where you sort of have that sort of mothership to go to. And it's something that Alice and I spoke about a lot, and it's something I'm still get a lot from helping people I know being diagnosed. And then, Alice's treatment seemed to go well. She had everything thrown at her. It was started off with chemo. We're at the Royal Marsden in Sutton, which was a long drive for us, but I think it's certainly worth it in terms of the care and the attitude. I don't know, but it was just, I think, I always say, if you're going to have cancer, go to the Marsden.
That's really interesting because you, having spoken to so many people who've undergone cancer treatment, it's like a lottery, isn't it, of where you go and the standard of care that you get. And so to hear that you were cared for well and that she was cared for and treated well, that's nice to hear. And if you can take something nice from this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the place. And anyway, so her treatment was chemo. Then she had a full mastectomy in January 2019, and then had another scan arranged by our GP just to put her mind at rest. Really, didn't think it was anything, but she seemed okay. I mean, she did a park run literally 4 weeks after the surgery. This is how sort of good things were looking. And we were told no, actually. It had spread. It was secondary cancer in her liver and lungs. It was terminal. And even then, we were told, this was sort of March, April 2019. At the end of March, I got the best ever birthday present in my life, where I was about to do the marathon for the Royal Marsden, and I got a pair of running socks from Teddy, and everybody, the whole family were here, and it was sort of one of the best kept secrets that everybody knew apart from me, and it was lovely. And inside the socks was a little box, um, uh, which had this ring in it, which I still wear, which we can talk about, and it said, "Dear Dad, Mum says, would you like to marry me?"
On the day that you were running the marathon?
No, it was on my birthday. It was on my birthday. So then, and then another thing, which I did the marathon for the Marsden, and this is where it all gets. But we were told, no consultant likes to give you a timeline, but we were told sort of the median life expectancy for somebody in your position is a year, which was in March 2019. So obviously we took that as an absolute minimum, and we made plans for a wedding, which was meant to be on the 9th of June, in our sort of almost our second home in a pub in Whitstable.
I know it well.
Yeah, and I did the marathon, and that's when sort of because I knew that Alice was terminally ill. I was doing it for the Marsden, got to a spot where she was meant to be at Canary Wharf, which was a special sort of viewing point for people with the particular charities that you ran for. And Alice wasn't there, and I sort of said to these complete strangers, "Where's Alice?" And she didn't manage to get to there. She saw me running past, got a video. It literally looks like an audition for extras in a zombie movie.
I can relate, having hauled myself around a marathon once.
Yeah. And but it was my mind just completely went. I was just in tears all the time, and I got hit the mental wall. My legs were kind of okay, but my time on the marathon wasn't. Yeah, I did it, and I'm proud of myself.
That's all that matters, Michael. That is all that matters.
And I raised, a really good chunk of money for the marathon, so it was great. But then that was when, we noticed Alice came up to watch me with Teddy, and my older boys and the family. And it just became really noticeable that actually going out for a day to London actually took the wind out of her
Yeah.
sails completely, and it absolutely knackered her. And that was, it was when we started to realise, things were starting to really hurt. Up until then, the cancer itself hadn't really been noticeable. Um,
Yeah.
and even then, she started taking morphine, and we moved on to sort of palliative care, which again we thought was long term. But then on the sort of 21st of May, she went for a new um, uh, sort of routine chemo session, which was a different one, which was meant sort of to prolong and slow things down. And she was just admitted. And then from there, on 23rd or 24th of May, she got transferred to Pilgrim's Hospice in Canterbury, which is what she wanted. Um, and I sort of spoke to the registrars and spoke to the staff, and I was given these sort of surreptitious nods about our wedding and whether or not it was realistic to have it happen on the 9th of June. And everybody bent over backwards and kind of understood. And Alice understood at that point. Um, and yeah, we got married at Pilgrim's Hospice on the 26th of May. And
So you
Alice
had to
was,
bring it forward.
yeah, we did. And,
Yeah.
which wasn't, having your wedding day as a mixture of well, I had more worse to come, but by then it was probably one of the worst days of my life and the best day of my life. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's, um,
Sort of a good analogy for grief, really, isn't it? This kind of
yeah,
best and worst at the same time, because Teddy was a similar age to Tabby when her
yeah,
dad died. And so you'll know very much that this idea that you have these wonderful experiences still, because life does go on, but everything is kind of still a bit sad, isn't
bittersweet.
it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then Alice died. I stayed with her in the hospice. Thank God COVID didn't exist then.
Oh gosh, yes, of course.
And my heart goes out to people who didn't, it's very important to me. I went to almost every single appointment with Alice, and we got a
Yeah.
good routine going where I would ask, I would have a list of questions, and I would pipe up at the end of the session if Alice had missed a question, but and I would be the note taker.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Yeah,
just,
John had a laminated piece of paper that he used to take to appointments just to avoid
yeah,
going through the whole rigmarole every time. You have to
yeah,
become this kind of medical expert as well as
yeah,
supporting the person you love, don't you?
exactly, exactly. So, and then we had quite a traumatic time. Alice was asleep a lot. She was sort of knocked out with um, drugs the last few days, and she had trouble. And she was delusional at times, and very traumatic. And
Yeah.
it's strange to, and it still haunts me, telling the person I loved most in the world that it was okay to die. Um, and then waking up um, on the sort of 1st of June at 7 o'clock and just holding her while she had her last breaths. And thank God I was there. And again, it's just one of those things. It's not even bittersweet, but I'm just glad I was there, telling her how much I and everybody loved her, and she was very much loved. She was fantastic.
She really, yeah. I mean, I was more of an acquaintance and a friend, but she was a very, very
Yeah,
loved and very popular and very vivacious, vibrant human being. And even hearing you talk, I can feel myself getting a little bit moist in the eyes and things, because I guess I was so kind of reeling with my own grief at the time. I suppose you think through the outside, and seeing a different perspective on it. And obviously, I've spoken to John in depth, and lots of people I speak to here about losing the person that you love at the end. And I guess this is the first time really I've spoken to somebody where I personally knew that other
yeah.
person. That makes sense. So this is different because it's bringing out. I feel really really fucking sad for Alice, and to you, and
Oh
the
God.
idea of her
And
saying,
it was,
my son's not going to have a mum. It's
yeah, and it was because I already had my chance at it. I mean, many people do and mean it. I mean, it's not suicidal to say that you wish you could swap places with them.
No, no, it's not.
I mean, we've been through a lot of sadness and haunting things and mistakes I've made, but thanks to you, I found way, widowed and young, much sooner than I would have done, I think. Um, and that's been a great lifeline, just an amazing lifeline. It's just in the early days, I mean, they're a mixture of a fog, but I just remember just being astonished at how sad it was possible to be.
Yes, and
Um,
still live and still
and,
survive.
and still live and be so sad it hurts, and to have moments where I've always thought with Teddy, he doesn't really remember his mum, and thank God, we have time hop and videos and things because
Yeah.
things happen so quick. All the nice ideas that obviously you missed out on, for the very different reason, but nice ideas like writing a birthday card for every year,
Yes. Yeah.
and
This is yeah. And yeah, I thought that, and I think, oh God, should I do, do this just in case? And of course, that's a ridiculous way to live your
yeah,
life. And quite frankly, I have enough to do without writing letters to my children in case I die. But I do
yeah.
think I now, as a result, I am much more in the front of the camera. I hate it unless I'm very much in control. But allowing the sort of slightly ugly or wobbly photos, because when you're gone, which we all will be one day, your children are not going to look at the pictures and go, "Oh God, Mum had a bit of a wrinkle on her forehead in that picture. Why on earth did she keep it in the album?" And
Mm.
I do think it shows you the importance of creating a. You don't have to splash them over social media. I have a folder in my phone called "When They're Older," and I put all the stupid little notes they write, and things
Yeah.
like that. And I take a photo and put it in. But it's when a child loses somebody as young as Teddy did, it is we are the kind of the keeper of the memories, and it is a responsibility that we have to keep. We can't keep the parents alive, but to keep the essence of them alive, to talk about them, and to make it part of the conversation, so that it doesn't become this kind of elephant in the room. That and I
Oh, God, yeah.
and I imagine that's exactly what you've done with Teddy, and you're very close to Alice's parents, aren't you? And they have an
Oh, oh,
involvement in raising him.
oh, yeah. Yeah, and I feel that one thing that's important is for your own well-being is grief mustn't be a competition, uh,
Hmm.
um, and but I do feel that for me personally, I've been hit by grief from three angles.
Hmm.
Um, uh, one is the loss of my personal loss of Alice, which look, that's such really horrible shit like that happens to people. But then secondly, I'm because Teddy didn't, Teddy was only 18 months when his mum died,
Yeah.
same as Tabby. It's sort of grieving for him as well on his
Yeah.
behalf, if you like. And, it does hurt, but it's important to be open, to show him pictures of mummy, to show, you know, to tell him about Alice and mummy and all of that. But then the biggest single one that smacks me is grieving for Alice. And
Yes.
it's those milestones with Teddy, because Teddy is just absolutely fantastic. He is lovable and loved, and you know, uh, his things like his first day at school, the day is his last day at school.
Yeah.
We got his school report. He's obviously very, very intelligent, and he's
And you
doing
just want
really
to
well.
show them, don't you?
And it's this stuff which, for me, is the biggest, and it always will be the biggest hitter. And it'll be when he's older, um, and he is. He's a very popular, and he also physically looks so much like his mummy.
He really does.
And some people might, I've heard other widows, sort of, particularly with in-laws or brothers-in-law, they have sometimes these issues where somebody says, "Oh, they can't come round because such and such reminds me too much of such and such."
Mm,
And I just think it's an absolute honour that
yes.
he looks like his mum. It's
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. She was
Yeah.
beautiful, and
That
exceedingly.
gorgeous. Yeah, John and I say the same thing actually, because all of my kids definitely look like their dad. They look like me as well, but they definitely look like their dad. And Monty, who you probably last saw when he was a little boy, is now taller than me, taller than John. So he gave me a hug the other day, and it, it felt like his dad hugged me, if I'm honest, and of course I burst into tears, and this poor kid never knows quite what he's going to get from me. But I think they love being told that they look like Ben. And Holly, obviously I never met Sarah, but John, sometimes it's sideswiped because as she grows older, she begins to take on much more of her mum. So I think it's lovely. I really like looking at them, but I do remember when Ben was one of 6, 5 boys, 1 girl, poor mother-in-law. And they're worse the other way around, I think. And they came over, and one of his brothers, I mean, not so much now, but he really was like a twin almost. And I found that very difficult. I was sort of head down crying, as we all are in that first bit. And I looked up and just looked at him and just like lost it. I am able to be in the same room as him now, but that real sort of bang thing that was quite shocking. And I often think about people who lose somebody that's a twin or something like that. That must be so uncanny.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit, Michael, about what it is like being a man grieving, because much like when you have a baby, still traditionally it is the mothers that will go to the yoga and the breastfeeding classes and all that sort of stuff. So you had an 18-month-old. Were you able to kind of integrate yourself into these groups, or did it make you feel a little bit more isolated because you
I
were responsible for a child?
I tried a bit, but it wasn't really for me because I'll be honest, the conversation's boring.
Yeah.
It's about babies.
Your
But
breasts not leaking then, Michael?
no, they weren't. They weren't. And but more generally, I mean, now I'm very open about it. And so, everybody in the school that Teddy's at now knows. I was quite worried, more worried, obviously, well, than Teddy would have been, but more worried for Ted than I probably should have been when he went to school and had things. And I've learnt a lot about how schools, how a school who deals with grieving children should work based on the school that Ted's been to.
I thought the same, because I feel when they're in their little bubble where it's all they've ever known, they don't feel different. But when they go to school, and yes, families come in all shapes and sizes, but they're probably going to be the only or one of a very small number of children who have lost a parent at that age. So by that very nature, they've got something different about them, which as a child is you don't really want. But my experience has been nothing but positive. I have to say, the schools have always been very supportive.
Oh, I'm going to paraphrase, but one thing with Teddy's school, which just astonished me because it's something I hadn't thought of, but on their open day, before we chose the school, I explained to the sort of the pastoral care, the family liaison lady, our situation. She said, well, continuity is very important. Yeah, I agree. And to paraphrase it, but I've been very open with Teddy and explained to him what happened to his mum in very straightforward, rather blunt terms.
Yeah.
There's not a religious bone in our body. And I am absolutely paraphrasing this, but she said, if Teddy were to get upset, we don't want a well-meaning old dinner lady to tell him that mummy's looking down on him from heaven, which would be
Yes.
very confusing. And I just was, it's something I hadn't thought of, and it sort of said, well, this is the right school for Ted, and it absolutely has been.
Yeah.
But,
And that's really interesting you say that. And it's something that comes up occasionally, because my children were in a Church of England school, not for any religious reason really, other than it was just the local village school. And there was a lot of assemblies and things. I mean, it wasn't excessive, I have to say. But Monty, I remember him coming home from school and just saying, how am I supposed to believe in God, like they want me to, when God wouldn't let my dad die? I mean, I can't argue with that, can I? So I'm very much of the belief that my children will believe what they believe. We're not religious. But yes, the idea that if people are telling you, your children, that they're a star or that they're in heaven watching you, I mean, it's a difficult one because some people do take a lot of comfort from that. But I personally found it quite confusing and conflicting. And I think the finality of death is something that they do need to understand.
Yeah. Well, one of my favourites is when people buy the feather. I mean, it's
I've got a feather tattooed, Michael, so don't be starting on that.
oh well, yeah, I think it's your cat probably killed a pigeon.
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. But do you know what? There were a couple of times in that very early stages where they would land on Tabby or they'd land around me, and I grabbed onto any comfort I could. And you do. I mean, I went to see a medium. Somebody paid for me to go as a gift, and I mean, I gave them grief. I took my ring off. I didn't give them any information, and they didn't even pick up on the fact that I was grieving. So, I mean, that sort of cemented my belief in that sort of thing. But we do lean into anything we can, and wherever people find comfort, right? I found mine in the bottle. What's more harmful?
So and that became. But back to the sort of the parenting thing. I mean, I'm now 53. My 50th birthday was very, very soon after. It was actually the week after COVID lockdown happened, which was an absolute blessing for me because I didn't want to do anything for my birthday. And one thing that Boris Johnson's ever done for me was to
saved you a 50th party.
Take the choice out of my hands. But I was lucky that somebody in my position, because I do know, I think there's something like 4 or 5 times as many widows of our age or my age than there are widowers. And it is a bit strange. And, there's certain things that you do get a little bit punchy about. But I'm just so lucky it wasn't my first gig at parenting.
Because being thrust into that first time.
And it goes also back to how amazing children are. But, one of the very traumatic thing going back to Alice's cancer diagnosis was literally as soon as she had it, she was told she had to stop breastfeeding, and all Teddy
I remember this
was breastfeed. And Alice had a scan which included some sort of radioactive stuff, so she had to go and stay with her best friend. And my job was to try and get Ted to drink bottles. Now, he'd always spat them out and snarled at them. And we thought it was going to be an absolute nightmare. And then come 1 o'clock in the morning, he wakes up, showing the bottle, he just snatches out the hand, and we didn't look back. And it is. And, the other thing that I'm just so proud of him with, if I'm taking his friends out on a going somewhere in our car or somebody else, I've noticed several times that the friends speak openly to Teddy about his mum being dead, or we know somebody who had cancer and they didn't die. And it makes me so proud that he can speak like that. And I think that's, it's not something that he, it is something that is just him. And, and I think this grief or this widowhoodness, is just us now. There's a sort of a life before and after, and it's, it's one of those things. It's, there's certain phrases which I think wind every widow up.
Go on.
What would Alice have thought? Or what would Alice think? Well, sorry, but you can just fuck off, because I wouldn't be in this mess if Alice was in a position to think about what the.
And this is it. And I had a message once saying, that Ben would be so ashamed of me or something like that. And I can't even remember what I'd done. It was nothing awful, but I just think, why be so unkind to us? There's no manual for this. I may produce one, because there is no manual for this.
Well,
you are floundering around.
Well, I say when I'm sort of doing my helpful things on Widows and Young, it says even what you choose to do is wrong, it's still right.
So, yeah.
And you just learn by your own mistakes if they are mistakes. And the other thing, I get a little bit chippy. I get upset when people call. I mean, it's people just being left-footed, really. But I get upset when people describe Alice as my ex.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because people sometimes say it, and then you see the look on their face when they realise what they've said.
I don't know what late wife is.
Oh, do you know? I mean, as you probably know, I prefer dead and alive husband. It gets complicated when you've got one dead and one alive. I tell you.
and solo parents as opposed to single parents.
Yeah.
With exceptions of somebody who's maybe escaped an evil sod. We don't have a weekend off.
No.
Um,
No, and you talk about the report, and this is the thing that, I know that many divorced parents it's not amicable, but there is at least somebody else in the world that cares as deeply about what's written in that report as you do.
yeah,
And somebody that cares, I know Teddy could, but somebody who genuinely cares when they take that first step, and celebrates and commiserates and feels everything with the intensity that you do. And I do think that really that's only another parent. And that is one of the enormous losses when you lose your spouse, when you have children, is that your co-pilot in this kind of journey of parenting and living is gone. And you have to make all these decisions. You would have chosen Teddy's school by yourself and
yeah,
deciding whether to stay in the house. Just, I don't know, who babysits for you. All these little,
yeah.
seemingly small decisions, they mount up. And
I will. And one thing I would do is, big shout out to Alice's family and my in-laws.
yeah, they're good people, aren't they?
They are very good people. I love them. And I couldn't do any of this without them. They will. It was one thing that it really impressed me when I first met Alice, was that if somebody in the family has a problem, they will just swoop down and circle. But you get very few families like that. Um,
Yeah.
and
I'm lucky I have a family like that, but
I
yeah,
couldn't
they are few and far between.
where it's unconditional, and I don't speak to my family for reasons I won't really.
Mm.
But
Go on.
oh, I will. My stepfather is an evil git who is very controlling. When I tried to phone him up to tell my mother, who he wouldn't let me speak to, that uh, Alice had died, it turned into an argument, which ended with him telling me I had it coming to me.
Oh, for fuck's sake, why do people say these
Yeah, that's
things?
not slander or libel. That's how it went. So,
Goodness me.
so
Goodness
yeah.
me. Well, do you know what? I'm genuinely sorry that happened, because
Well, it's the rubbish putting itself out, which is a great phrase for
do
it.
you know what? For somebody, I had an issue with a friend recently, and somebody used a quote much like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was brilliant, and I'm going to remember one day and use it.
Yeah.
So talk to me about sort of life now. Were you able to go back to work? Obviously,
Well,
you've stayed in Whitstable. Are you still in the family home? I like your
yeah.
wallpaper, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah, we've actually got rid of your sofa though. Hello, one.
Oh God, I forgot you had my sofa years ago. That was years ago.
Hey, look. Yeah,
What am I seeing here?
that's I think you gave us some cutlery.
Oh, probably. Wait, was it when you first moved in? I think you
Yeah.
got all my stuff.
But no. So I've stayed here. I had a catering business, which was a gourmet burger business, which was nice. We had the lovely old Citroen vans and several trailers, and it was just starting to kind of do something. But then April 19, I just took a step back from it.
Understandably.
With Alice, and then almost ready to go back to March 2020, and then obviously COVID hit. So for a catering business, that was the jackhammer in the coffin.
Yeah.
But it was good because, in a way, because with hindsight, I hadn't really considered what I'd do, but with being this solo parent, there's absolutely no way I could get a catering business back to where it should be, put the hours in, with Teddy. I wouldn't
No.
be with him enough. And the one thing that is important to us both is being with each other. We do get time
Yeah.
off from each other, and thanks to my in-laws. But
And
um,
school, God bless. Oh no, we're on
yeah,
holidays.
yeah. Well, even one night a week religiously, he goes and stays with his uncle
Oh, does he?
in Faversham.
Oh, that's lovely.
um, which is great. That's my sort of let off steam day. Um, um, but so yeah. But then COVID killed the catering business, so I was sat wondering what to do, and so I set up a small charity named ACT, after Alice Coulson-Tabb, charity consulting, where I'm specifically trying to help small charities, and and in an ethical way. I was in financial services. I know how commissions and how reptilian fundraising can get. I describe small charities as, there's no particular definition of them, but they are those charities you don't know exist until you need them.
Yeah.
Like Way, like a marvelous one called Mummy Star, which provides support to women who are diagnosed with cancer during or soon after pregnancy.
Holding
Just
on,
those,
letting go. They were one that I came across, and they've been invaluable for my
yeah,
family.
yeah. So those are the ones. And give me the details of them. I'd love to try and.
Do you know what I'm thinking of putting Teddy? No, I can't put Teddy in. Tabby, the other one, in for a weekend, because I think she's now old enough to sort of access these feelings. So perhaps maybe we could even arrange it so that they went together. That would be quite cute.
Is that holding on, letting go, or
Holding on, letting go? Yeah, they're really, really lovely, and they do sort of 2-day workshops for the children to go on, and they do craft and they talk, and it sort of really helps them process their feelings. And if the adults wish to, they do sort of adult sessions as well, where you actually get to do craft, which is quite cool, really.
That's the
And
one thing on his Teddy's school report, that expressive arts and design is the only one that he's working towards, not working out or working at greater depth down. So,
well, that sounds like you have got a very capable and well-rounded child, which, to be honest with you, mate, I think well done, because
well,
look at us.
it's
We're
okay coming
navigating
from
these
you.
kids through.
Yeah, it's okay coming from you. Sometimes it's a bit, oh, you're doing such a good job. Well,
Yeah. John found this actually. He said he found it quite patronising.
yeah,
But I
I
think when it
thought I
comes from
wasn't.
another widow who
Yeah,
understands that you're not
exactly.
just raising a child, you are raising a child whilst your feet are on fire, and it's raining cats
And
on your head. It's not just raising a child.
it is, and it's also because I've already had children and raised them. They're much older. They're 25 and 22, and I'm trying to raise Teddy in the way that I think Alice and I would have done,
Mm,
rather than the way I did.
yeah.
And so, we might be a lot less strict about things, um, but that
I
might
think
be a
you
time thing. But it is. I'm trying to, raise
you
them.
sort of reevaluate what matters. And I now realise that it doesn't matter if I don't bake each child in the class a cupcake for my child's birthday. A bag of Haribo's will suffice, right? Yeah, no, he was in a small class. I've only done this once. Don't judge me. And it just, I don't know, the idea that good enough is enough. And so long as they're getting the fundamentals, which is we're getting them to school and we love them and they feel safe, if the place is a bit grubby, they're not going to come to any harm. And I do think you reevaluate what really matters. And I'm not great at this. I still kind of keep striving to, I don't know, for perfection, missing it on absolutely every occasion, I hasten to add. But I think that stems from the need to fill a gap, and to make their lives that little bit more magical because of what's been taken. But that's very much a me problem, I
No,
think.
like school is, the one thing that really annoys me. I found out really annoys me is the non-uniform days and all of those, and remembering what you're supposed to be
Oh,
doing. I've even sent Juliet Donaldson a tweet, which was, do you think, this is for International Book Day, do you think your next book could be the boy who wore his fucking uniform to school every day?
yeah. I know. We've got 4 different schools, and parent mail just pings repeatedly, and I don't know what's going on, what day it is, or what my own name is anymore. But tomorrow is our last day, and then we have 6 weeks off for some, a bit longer for the others, and then it's just about sort of crowd management and keeping sane, really, isn't it? But of course, you live in Whitstable. You would be down at the beach, won't you?
Well, we're going there. Well, it's Teddy's last day today, so it's the end of a year. And it is,
And
again,
is that year 1 that he's finished?
yeah. No, year
Yeah.
off. Oh, that's
Oh, he's finished year. Oh, so he's the same year as Tabs. Oh, I didn't realise
yeah.
that.
Mm,
That is a big achievement, isn't it? Because it's
yeah.
huge. They've
Yeah.
gone from
I mean,
being
again, it's a milestone, and again, it's just sports day, everything. You just have to have a
yeah,
moment by yourself. When,
yeah,
when
yeah, and
you
it is important to recognise it as well, because you feel this immense pride and elation, but you are to recognise that hole that's missing, and to recognise that Alice should be there at the sideline on sports day, and she should be there for the last assembly. And
yeah,
there is always going to be a gap in both of your lives, but by kind of giving him this fulfilled and happy childhood and this feeling of safety and love, we all often say that this is a terrible thing that happened to our children, but I don't want them to be defined by it. I don't want them to always be the kid whose mum died or dad died. I want them to know that that is a fundamental part of who they are, but they are still going to go on and do and live a life and be their own person.
That's one of the most difficult things for me to shake. So I don't want to be
the widower.
You know, people who haven't been through it, so their life, they get on with their lives. You know that as fact, and you just have to get used to it. I don't mind picking people up when they call Alice my ex, and I just say, actually, in our situation, I prefer the term solo parent. I'll explain why.
Yes.
But I don't mind any of that. But it's it's being worried about being that sort of mad old bloke who's the one who but people just do think, come on, get over it. Sometimes they say too soon, which is
you can't win. You can't win. It's too soon. It's not soon enough. And for men, I think they feel under pressure to provide the maternal figure. And I think actually, if it happens and it's right and it works, brilliant. It's worked really well for us. But it's not something that you do to create a parent for them. It's something you do because the whole of family, everybody involved is going to thrive.
I've heard that phrase being spoken about other people, and it's made me want to almost do violence.
Yeah.
I get very angry about that because it's not funny.
And you don't know how you'd react until it happens. So I wouldn't wish it on them, but you save the judgment for when it's you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I suppose again when it's sort of healthy, but coming to understand, because I'm 4 years in now, and it's never going to go away. I don't think I want grief to ever go away completely. I certainly don't want it to be like it was in the early days, where it was, where it's unmanageable, and it would hit you like somebody's just sneaked up behind you with a shovel and whacked you around the back of the head. And I had my panic attacks. I sort of had one in a bank, but that was her fault. And then
why was it her fault?
Well, I was actually in with friend Vicky to very early days to try and sort Alice's bank account out. I won't name the bank that has black horses.
Is that the one that promises to look after you as well?
Yeah, that's the one. And I'd made an appointment with them to come in and to. Is
that your phone, MCT? That's unprofessional. At least it wasn't mine.
No, I've never done this before, really. And they were meant to know what it was for, and she didn't have a clue. I went in with all the documents, and she was looking at our marriage certificate and Alice's death certificate, and just piped up with, "Ooh, you weren't married long, were you?"
Oh. No, we weren't. She died, yeah. I had the same when I went to pay off some of the mortgage, and the woman said to me, "Oh, you lucky thing." And I said, "Not really, no, that's my husband's life insurance." And not enough for the mortgage, actually. But it's the well-meaning or just thoughtless comments. And you just think, oh my God, you have no... Somebody said to me that I was really lucky that my kid had a piece of paperwork with the HCP. And I sort of said, yes, but he got it when he was 5 because his behaviour deteriorated to such an extent because his dad had died. Like, swap. People, they don't understand that actually the impact this leaves, and we talk about our children not wanting to be defined by it, but the impact that this leaves on all of us is kind of indelible, inedible, Mark, immovable. Jesus Christ, this is where the brain drops off. Mark that's left, and the grief that we carry, it is part of honouring them, and it is part of the love. And there's a quote that I've seen, and it says that love, grief is the continuation of love. And I sort of that because
they
are still with us. And like you say, we only have to look at the children and we see them.
I've used the amount of pain is directly related to the amount of love.
Yes.
And so the more it hurts, it is because it was
fucking painful.
Yeah.
And because it was painful, because these things do hurt and they do last, and it's not an injury that you can take a medication for and get better. It is an injury that, you know, you have to learn to live with and grow around. And there are days still that I don't want to get out of bed, and I imagine that you have the same moments. Or there'll be days when, even when a kid has been a bit challenging, and you just think, why aren't you here to help here? And I know what you mean, because time and time again in the early days, I was, I didn't want, partly I didn't want to have to deal with the shit that was left behind. I felt like he had the easy option here because he wasn't here. I know now that that's ridiculous.
No, I
And
know it is ridiculous, and I've never felt like that, and I understand that the sort of anger can be one of the stages of grief, and I never had that. It's never been anger directed at Alice, and I've
yeah,
tried. Obviously, a 4 or 5 year old will wind you up at times with the incessant "I want, I want, I want." I'm thinking about what I want 3 times after I've just got what I said. What I
have I
want.
written my birthday list that's not for 3 months? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And but yeah, I've never, never, because I maybe in a way, and again, this is another one of those things where the gossip mill that people, I'm sure, have said about me, because we got the mortgage paid off, and thankfully in a way that protects Teddy. But I'm sure lots of people have been saying, "Oh, he's landed on his feet," which leads to what we want to. If I ever get,
Yeah, there is an idea that we're all sort of left well off, particularly if we are able to access life insurance. But of course, so many of my peers weren't, because either they had a pre-existing condition or they were so young they hadn't thought about taking it out. And as I've said myself, I was surprised to find out that Ben did have life insurance. More surprised to find out that it covered extreme sport, and even more surprised that they paid out, because I didn't have a death certificate. So it took a long time to access it. And then when it arrived, it didn't even cover the mortgage. So yes, it was incredibly helpful, and it enabled me to have a very small mortgage. So I'm like you, I sort of ran a business half trying to keep a roof, and but I was in no means left, sitting on like Scrooge McDuck on my piles of money. And also, it doesn't soften the loss. It might give you a little bit of breathing space, so you are
right.
able to be there at the school gate every day, but it doesn't
Well,
replace what you've
it goes
lost.
back to that landing on your feet thing. Yeah, and we were the same. I used to be a financial advisor, but I often said every plumber has a leaky tap, and true hairdressers have crap haircuts. And financial advisors tend not to be the exception
You
now.
know,
But Alice was sensible, and the mortgage was covered. And we are lucky, particularly in the current climate, that there is no mortgage or rent to pay. Just have to
it
keep the
just
house.
gives you time to breathe a
Um,
bit, doesn't it?
which is a lifesaver from where my finances have been recently. But it's not landing on your feet at all. I
No,
do.
it's not. And I think people thought that when I married John as well. Well, she's done all right for herself. She's married again. She must be fine. And to those people, I wish that they could see me when I'm paralyzed with grief on the floor, and I don't want to lift my head up, because it means facing the reality of a life without the person that I loved for so many years. And that still really fucking hurts. And yes, I love John and I love my family and I love my life and I'm very happy, but that doesn't take away from the magnitude of my loss.
This is what
And it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, was to sort of
yeah.
talk about these things that people don't understand.
This is what I mean. I'm so happy for you two. And you know, I'm not ready for a relationship. I don't think. I was married for 6 days my entire life. I've never married to the mother of my older children, so it's
6 days.
Um, and I've tried moving the ring and putting it on the right hand, and it's. I'm not into symbolism, but it just doesn't
It
sit right.
feels right. No, and this
Um,
is the thing, you do what
and,
feels right. I'm in the process of having mine made into a different ring so that I can wear them, because I miss
yeah,
them.
and and I've always sort of been of the view that if I were to have a relationship, and this is about protecting myself and the other person and Teddy, to protecting potentially 3 of us, it would only be with a widow, or it only could be, because I wouldn't want to risk the sort of the honeymoon period of any relationship, then going sour with, all it takes is one comment. Oh, will you stop going on about her?
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
this house is not a shrine to Alice, but there are pictures up of her, and they ain't going
Same.
anywhere. And I
No.
don't want. I don't want to put somebody in that position where they might start resenting Alice's presence in mine and Teddy's life, because
Yeah,
that
it's
would be,
definitely a very, very complicated dynamic. And I've only the experience of being in a relationship with another widow, obviously,
yeah,
but I do speak to people who are in relationships with non-widows, and it is difficult because essentially there's 3, or in our case 4 of you in the relationship. You know, they're kind of not particularly vocal, the other people, but
well,
they are a presence, aren't they? And
they're not Camilla.
not Camilla. I know that it does sound like that when I say it, doesn't it? No. So, Michael, just quickly before we finish up, really, I do, and it's entirely up to you, but we do talk a little bit on here about the coping strategies, and you hinted a little bit about alcohol. Now, this, and Michael, I say this looking you in the eye. This is entirely up to you if you want to answer this, but am I right that you have struggled a little bit with alcohol? How are you?
Yeah,
Are you?
yeah,
Yeah. It,
absolutely. It got very bad particularly in the early days, and
mm,
I was um, I got to the point where I was drinking, after Ted had gone to bed, but drinking lots,
I know.
and going out to pubs with Ted as well at times, which was, you
Yeah.
can't really have a 3-year-old who knows the names of the bar staff, let alone the names of the pubs. And yeah, it got to a point it was too much, and we had intervention by social services,
Did you?
which
Do you
was
know? I didn't know this. That must have been
oh
incredibly
no,
scary for you.
it could have been, but well, the first social work we had was awful and rubbish, but then we had an amazing guy who, he was helpful and supportive, and I knew
That's really
that
reassuring to hear, actually.
it's not necessarily as scary as you want it to be. It can be something that's just an extra layer of support, which could have consequences.
Yeah.
Um,
And perhaps in that moment, some of us, we do need a little bit of a metaphorical slap in the face to
yeah, yeah,
realise that what we're doing is destructive and
yeah,
that it will have consequences.
yeah, and then yeah, and so yeah, so it happened, and I still drink. Um,
Mm.
I still go out and get uh, quite drunk with friends, but now again, thanks to my in-laws, I keep that uh, to the one big night a week, which is when Teddy goes off and has an overnight stay with my brother-in-law. And the best bit of that is not really the going out. Um,
Is it the lion in the morning? It's the lion in the morning.
it's and no, he's an absolute star with it. It's a lion in the morning till about sort of mid-afternoon. So it's an absolute. It's
That you see, I am up at 5. I don't think I could sleep in till mid-afternoon anymore. But
probably
it's I just want to touch on this a little bit, Michael, because for you to say that publicly, that you have had external intervention, and that it wasn't as actually as terrifying as one might imagine. So talking about sort of social services intervention, and that it's not as terrifying as people might think, and that actually they are there to support you through this. That's quite reassuring to hear, and I really admire you for talking openly about it, because it is something that many of us are really scared of. And I know when I first started therapy, it took me months to admit how much I was drinking, because I was so scared that there'd be external involvement. As it happens, there wasn't, because my drinking has sort of got under control. And as you'll be aware, I'm
yeah,
18 months sober. But it, it is a really efficient way of masking pain. Not long term, because it doesn't go
well,
anywhere, but
yeah,
it it gives you that release that you so badly need. And it's easy for people to judge, and for us to judge ourselves and feel an element of shame about it. But actually, like I said, there is no manual, and who can blame us for the bottle being a very quick anesthetic when we need it? So I think that you have taken steps to change your lifestyle and to make it safer, but without compromising you having a life. I admire
yeah.
this. I really do.
And it is, and it hasn't been plain sailing, and it won't be. I mean, I'm unless I do what you've done. Um,
What's that? Get married?
no, stop it, knock it on the head
Oh,
completely.
stop it on the head, the drinking.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, hand on heart, I say it was the best thing I've ever done. It's one of the most things I'm most proud of. It doesn't come without its difficulties. My social anxiety is great. I realised there was a reason I got so drunk before I went to social engagements. But I'm just a little bit more selective about what I do and where I go now. And um, I'll tell you what, mate, no hangovers. Like, that's all I
Oh,
need
it
to
is
say.
nice. I mean, again, it's nice to get through the week and then wake up because Teddy is a big sleeper. I have to wake him up for school.
Do Tabs is as well. She gets up about 8 o'clock. It's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, it is nice waking up with them.
Yeah, just emptying an empty house is really nice. You wouldn't want it all the time, but just
Oh, yeah.
occasionally.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, unless you've got anything else that you really wanted to talk about, I think that we've probably got everything we need for today.
I think I'm not trying to dampen it down, but on the social worker thing, because I had two different ones. One was Paul, and I think that they're overworked. I think and then the other guy, who came and helped, was very, very good. But sadly, because of where they are, I was very, very lucky. So
Yeah.
don't go there.
Yeah.
You don't want to go there because they are all overworked and they will often take the path of least resistance, which can be scarier than it need be.
Yeah, and I think on that note, if any of our listeners are struggling, if you are perhaps trapped in, we kind of jokingly refer to it as the chicken and wine stage, but if this chicken and wine stage is becoming problematic, and you are concerned, and you please do message us. We can't necessarily help, but we can point you in the right direction of support, because the last thing any of you need is any more trauma, I guess, or any more worry. So there is help available out there, and we are happy to help people find it. And Michael, I wish you all the best this afternoon as you pick Ted up from completing his first year of primary school, which is a milestone, a monumental milestone for any child. But for a child who has managed this without his mum, I think it is a really, really massive one, and for both of you. And I hope that you've got some tissues in your pocket in case you cry, and some support up at the school today, because yeah, sometimes it really does get you in the feels, this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Okay.
All right, my lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to flash at you your invite. So there we go. So Michael got wind of the fact that we're having a little party to celebrate the first 50 guests of WAF. And as he only lives about 25 minutes away, he has rang with you now. Get an invite because you've been on the podcast. Well done.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Michael. And thank you very much to all our listeners for continuing to support us as we do this. John and I will be back on Friday to have a little discussion around this episode. So let us know if there's anything you'd like us to talk about. And for now, everybody, you just take care of yourselves, and I will be back with you soon.
Okay, thank you.